So in a strange move, kind of like last year, Apple launched 3 phones, 2 at once and then 1 a month later. But the difference this year was that 1 a month later was supposedly their budget phone. Now, I already did my complete walkthrough on the XS and the XS Max, which you can check out below, but now it's time to do it on the XR. Now, if you're not familiar, a complete walkthrough on this channel is where I try to go through every feature I possibly can on a new device so that you guys are better informed and better prepared should you be in the market to actually go buy one. With that said, there is a lot to go through, and I've been listening to you guys, and I made this one as in-depth as I could with the short amount of time that I had it, so I hope you guys enjoy it, but fair warning, it's not short. So let's get started real quick with the design. Now, the iPhone XR is made out of a glass on the front and back with an aluminum frame compared to the stainless steel of the XS and the XS Max. Now on the left, we have our volume buttons and our notification toggle that can be used to turn off the ringer. On the right, we have our power button and our SIM card slot. You can fit a nano SIM in this slot, but the iPhone also supports eSIM, which is a virtual SIM that you can call your carrier to activate if they support it. And instead of needing a physical SIM card, you just do that, it automatically starts to work. Now you can also tap and hold on this power button that's here to get Siri to listen to you in a walkie-talkie style as well. Now at the top, we have nothing. On the bottom, we have our speaker grills and the lightning port capable of fast charging with a fast charger sold separately that'll get the phone from 0 to 50% in about 30 minutes. On the front, we have our 6.1-inch 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio, 828 by 1792 pixel resolution LCD that Apple is calling their liquid LCD, which lets them get the screen closer to the edges of the display. This size fits squarely between the XS and the XS Max, both of which have AMOLED screens and higher resolutions. Now above that screen, we have the same Face ID setup as we do on the XS and the XS Max with the dot projector, flood, IR camera, etc. and our front-facing 7-megapixel f2.2 aperture 32mm equivalent camera. This means that you can take the same selfies you can on the XS and the XS Max, including portrait mode with the various 3D lighting effects, and you can use Face ID to unlock the device with your face. Because of all this, you'd have a hard time telling it apart from the XS, for example, from the front at a quick glance. We even removed the home button and bottom bezel, so you'll be using the same gesture-based system that the X, XS, and XS Max all use. Closer inspection, and you might be able to tell the difference in the resolution, the LCD versus AMOLED, and I swore there are slightly bigger bezels, but when I put them side by side, if there are, it's only very slightly. Now, one of the other things that separate the look from the other 2 iPhones launched this year is the fact that, just like the 5C from a while ago, Apple is releasing the XR in a few different color options. We have blue, white, black, yellow, coral, and red, which is from Product Red, the charity. Weight-wise, it weighs a bit more than the XS for some reason, by about 20 grams, and less than the XS Max by about 15 or so. It's IP67 certified, so it can handle 1 meter of water for up to 30 minutes, compared to the IP68 of the XS and XS Max, which can do 2 meters for 30 minutes. For storage, we have the choices of 64, 128, and 256 gigs. It's being powered by the Apple Bionic A12 chipset, the same as the other 2 devices, but it only has 3 gigs of RAM compared to the 4 of the XS and the XS Max. Now we have 802.11ac Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.0, gigabit LTE, and a 2942 milliamp battery, which is compared to the 2658 milliamp battery of the XS and the 3174 of the XS Max. Because of this, it's rated to actually last as long as the Max does. And finally, we have Qi charging, as we do with all of the newer iPhones as well. Now for software, we're running iOS 12, which you are all probably familiar with if you're watching this, but just in case, let's run through some of it really fast. First, we have the new gesture system that I mentioned. Now you can swipe up to go home, swipe up and hold to get to multitasking, swipe along the bottom to move between recent apps, pull down on the top right of the screen in between the notch and the right edge to get your control center, and pull down from anywhere else on the top to get to your notifications. We also do not have 3D touch on the XR like we do on the other iPhones. So instead, you have to simply tap and hold. Now, it's not really a big deal to me. It only really stops you from doing quick actions on app icons as far as I've noticed so far in my short period of time. Now, the reason it does this is because a tap and hold on an icon on that home screen actually puts you into edit mode normally. And since there is no 3D touch, you can't get to the other context menu. Now, the apps that Apple includes automatically, really fast, I'm sure you're familiar with, but let's run through them. FaceTime. This is the app that allows you to do video calling with anyone else that has FaceTime, whether on their Mac or their iOS device. Photos. This is the photo gallery, which sorts everything by date, by event, etc. Mail, this is our mail client. Clock, this is our clock, which also has things like timers, alarms, stopwatches, etc. Maps, this is Apple Maps, which I'm not a big fan of. I always prefer Google Maps, which you can download from the App Store. But this is Apple's version of Google Maps. It's just not quite as accurate because it just hasn't had as long and as much data as Google has, but this is what's included. Weather, this is your weather app. Calendar, this is your calendar app, which can show various views and tie into various different accounts like Exchange to bring up events in here as well. Notes, their note-taking app. Reminders, their reminder app for tasks and to-dos. Apple News, which is Apple's version of like a Flipboard or another news curator. We have Stocks, which shows you various stocks that once you put them in there, will keep track of, as well as news on financial information. iTunes Store, this is where you can actually go buy music, rent movies and purchase movies, etc. App Store, this is what we're used to, where we download all of our apps. Books, this is where you can download various books and read them directly on the device, as well as highlight, bookmark, and other normal features that we're used to in book type apps. Health, this is Apple's health program that allows you to keep track of steps, calories, etc. HomeKit, this allows you to tie into various IoT devices within your house so long as they are HomeKit enabled, and you can use Siri to control them. Wallet, this is where you can store all of your bank card information and use Apple Pay, along with download various apps that allow you to keep things like your boarding pass from your airplane ticket, etc. Tips, this is Apple's app to get the most out of your device. Podcast, this is Apple's app that allows you to subscribe to podcasts and listen to them as well. Find My iPhone allows you to find your iPhone should it ever get lost or stolen via their web portal. Find My Friends allows you to see anyone else that also has Find My Friends that has enabled you to be able to see their location in real time. Contacts, this is where your contacts are obviously. Files, this is a file explorer and it's relatively new actually to iOS, but it allows you to go through the files on your phone in case you need to find your PDF, your Word document, etc. Watch, this comes automatically on all iOS devices, but it is only useful if you have an Apple Watch, as it is used to control that, download different watch faces, etc. Voice memos, this is a quick little recording app. Compass is a compass. Measure is kind of clever and it's also relatively new. This allows you to actually use the AR portion of ARKit, as well as the rear-facing camera to point different locations on the floor, on a wall, etc., and be able to accurately measure the distance between those points. We have our calculator that we're used to by now. Clips, which is an app that allows you to make short movies on your phone. iMovie, which allows you to edit movies on your phone. iTunes University, which is their courses and learning center where you can purchase new courses or find some free ones to learn new things from various different topics. TV, this is Apple's new app for controlling and watching live television as well as other pre-recorded shows. Safari is their native browser for browsing the internet. Phone is our dialer. Messages is our messaging app, which also supports iMessage, of course. Music is our music app, where you can download music from Apple Music, as well as playback songs that you just have on the phone. Sheets is their version of Excel. Pages, their version of Word. Keynote, their version of PowerPoint. And GarageBand is a fun little app that allows you to make music. Which brings us to the camera. Now, this is particularly interesting to me about the XR. It has the exact same main camera as the XS and the XS Max. So we have a 12 megapixel f1.8 26mm equivalent focal length camera with 1.4 micron sized pixels. We have our quad LED dual tone flash, phase detection autofocus, which is pretty quick, optical stabilization, and we even have the smart HDR feature that Apple has put in all of the newer iPhones. They make for some pretty awesome shots in difficult lighting situations. The only thing missing is the 2x telephoto camera. But without it, you can still do portrait mode on the rear camera using some software trickery. The only catch here is that it requires a person to be visible in the frame, unlike the XS and the XS Max that you could use portrait mode on any object as well as people. Most likely this is because the algorithms are tuned to people and not every object, and Apple might not have wanted to put it in there without the extra depth data from the telephoto, but who knows. One nice thing about that is that it means that when you do take the portrait mode photo of a person at least, you can get closer to them because it doesn't switch to the zoomed in telephoto like the others do. And I have to admit, it still does a good job. And if companies like Google have shown us with the Pixel, you don't necessarily need those two cameras. Diving into the camera itself further, we have the following modes. We have our flash options. We have live photos that you can turn it off, which allow the camera to take a small video clip before and after you take a photo, which can then be played back by tapping and holding on the photo in the gallery. We have a timer. We have filters, think Instagram filters. We have time lapse, which lets you take slower frame rates so that you can actually speed up a video. Slow-mo, which does the opposite. It takes higher frame rates so that you can then slow down a video. And you record slow motion in 1080p at either 120 frames a second or 240 frames a second. Video mode, which allows us to record video up to 4K in 60 frames per second. A normal auto mode for taking photos. Portrait mode, which as I mentioned, for the rear camera at least, requires a person. Whereas on the front camera, because we still have that Face ID technology up in the top, it allows you to do portrait mode with all of the same 3D effects that you're used to. Then we also have square, which just makes the image 1:1 aspect ratio. And finally, we have panorama, which we should be used to by now, but it allows you to take multiple photos and have them stitch all together to get a much longer panoramic shot. And really quick, let's go through the camera settings. We have preserve settings, which allows you to make sure that it preserves different settings whenever you open the camera. I don't know why you should have to do this. I think it should just always be that way, but if you don't have this on, it will automatically revert to its default every time the camera is opened. Then we have grid, which you can select from various grids. Scan QR codes, which allows you to actually use the camera to scan QR codes instead of having to use a separate app, which is nice. In record video, we have the different frame rates and resolutions. Record slow-mo, same thing. Record stereo sound. It allows it to use two different microphones to record a left and a right channel that can play back so long as anything supports stereo, which most things do. Formats, we can choose between the different formats that we might want to record in. Smart HDR is their new high dynamic range settings, which works for video as well as for photo, supposedly, but here you can turn it off if you'd like. Keep normal photo. Now this will allow you to keep a normal photo whenever you do take an HDR photo. I don't think there's really a point in leaving this on, it just adds to your storage space, which is kind of annoying, unless you were trying to, say, test to see what the difference is between HDR and not. And there you guys, a complete walkthrough. A lot of things I went through on the iPhone XR. Let me know what you guys think of the phone, of this video itself. Like, should I do more, less? What things should I take out? What should I add when it comes to complete walkthroughs? Especially when it comes to iPhones, it's a little difficult because I feel like the software is the same every time for the most part. And you guys are all used to it for the most part. So, I don't know. You guys let me know though, I'd love to hear about it. But also, I think this is interesting. This phone, to me, has a lot of the same features as the XS and the XS Max. It fits squarely in between in size, comes in a bunch of fun colors, and it's a lot cheaper. The only thing you really miss is that telephoto lens, the screen quality a little bit, but I promise you if you didn't have them side by side, it'd be difficult for most people to tell the difference. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this phone? Let me know about that as well in the comments below. Always love to hear from you guys. Otherwise, if you like this video, please thumbs up it or share it. It's greatly appreciated. Also subscribe and ding the bell next to where subscribe if you're not already so you get notified when I do new videos. Otherwise though, as always, regardless, thanks for watching.